from Hollywood, I'm Martin Grove, welcoming you to our Screendollars podcast, Box Office Autopsy. Right now, we'll look at the movie marketplace and analyze how things are going and where they're going, sharing some opinions from my perspective after decades of talking about Hollywood on CNN Entertainment Tonight and as a Hollywood Reporter columnist. There's a new king to talk about this weekend, and she's starting her reign in theaters everywhere as critics and audiences alike celebrate Sony TriStar's The Woman King. The PG-13 historical action drama, which reportedly cost $50 million to produce, is a welcome change from Hollywood's late summer, early fall menu of modest horror originals. On today's Box Office Autopsy, we'll cover The Woman King's coronation, and we'll see how they ran. Then we'll look ahead to next weekend's controversial Don't Worry, Darling, and the theatrical reissue of James Cameron's 2009 Avatar. Later in our Oscar Outlook Spotlight, we'll discuss what those lowest ever 74th Primetime Emmy ratings mean for the 80th Golden Globes and the 95th Oscars. And we'll look at who the Academy's just hired to executive produce the 95th Oscars. We start today with The Woman King, which had no trouble capturing first place, helped by critics' applause of 94% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 99% audience score. That means great word of mouth will be driving it in the weeks ahead. Let's take a quick look now as this weekend's warriors prepare for battle.
When it rains, our ancestors weep for the pain we have felt in the dark hulls of ships bound for distant shores. When the wind blows, our ancestors push us to march into battle against those who enslave us. When it thunders, our ancestors demand we rip the shackles of doubt from our minds and fight with courage. We fight not just for today, but for the future. We are the spear of victory. We are the blade of freedom.
The New King began its box office reign at 3,765 theaters with a royal $19 million. Hollywood handicappers were buzzing about 16 to 20 million, while exhibitors were projecting 19 to 21 million. King is targeted to adult females and has very strong playability to African American audiences, a combination that left it wearing this weekend's box office crown. Thanks mostly to King, this weekend didn't set a new low for the fall or for the year. The overall marketplace per ComScore was $50.3 million, up 13.7% from the prior weekend, but down 17.3% from 2021's comparable weekend. ComScore's year-to-date tally shows 2022 with $5.54 billion. That's up 135.2% from $2.36 billion in 2021. Disney and 20th Century took second place with weekend 2 of their horror thriller Barbarian, which held better than expected. Its $6.3 million gross was down 40%, not 65%, as media pundits anticipated. Barbarian's domestic cume is now $20.9 million. Not surprisingly, this weekend also saw another horror film hit theaters. A24 and Bronze R-rated Pearl placed third, but just by a few dollars, with $3.12 million at 2,935 theaters. It's got an okay 86% critic score on RT and a so-so audience score of 82%. Pearl's a spin-off of A24 and Bronze R-rated horror thriller X, which opened last March 18th to $4.3 million. It went on to do $11.8 million domestic and $14.5 million worldwide. Searchlight Pictures' PG-13 comedy mystery, See How They Run, missed projections by exhibitors and media analysts that it would open to $5 to $7 million. Instead, it arrived to a slow $3.10 million at 2,404 theaters, putting it in fourth place, just slightly behind Pearl. When the box office dust settles Monday, they could change positions. Run, which wasn't on the tracking, was targeted to adults and in particular to women over 25. It didn't help having the critics at just 70% on Rotten Tomatoes and a matching audience score of 70%. Run's ensemble cast includes Saoirse Ronan, Sam Rockwell, Adrian Brody, and David Oyelowo. It takes place in London's West End theatre district in the 1950s, when plans to film a hit play are unexpectedly stopped by a murder. When an inspector, Rockwell, and a rookie constable, Ronan, begin investigating, they find that they themselves are now at peril. Here's a quick look to help you decide if you want to see it or skip it.
A real-life detective.
I understand that you came to blows the night in question.
It was me, Inspector.
I arrest you for the murder of Leo Cochran.
No.
We have a serial killer on the loose.
Please, stand back.
He keeps the key. Under the mat.
We are no longer merely suspects. We are also potential victims.
Ticket sales should pick up next weekend with Warner Brothers and New Line's opening of the R-rated mystery thriller Don't Worry, Darling. It's been in the global media spotlight since premiering at the 79th Annual Venice Film Festival, where director Olivia Wilde and Florence Pugh, who stars opposite Wilde and Harry Styles, were the talk of the town after bitter personal conflicts during production. As Darling's 7-minute standing ovation at Venice happily raged on, media reports said the feuding Wilde and Pugh didn't once make eye contact. Although Darling played in competition for the Golden Lion Award, it didn't win, and probably was hurt by its star versus director controversy. On the other hand, that same controversy might be helpful at the box office by increasing awareness of the film. It's the story of a housewife living in a 1950s experimental utopian village called Victory, who worries that her husband's company is hiding very troubling secrets. The critics, however, aren't hiding the fact that they hate Wilde's movie, giving it just 36% on Rotten Tomatoes. This scene will help you decide if the critics are right.
Victory has things money can't buy. I live next door. You wouldn't believe the things I've heard. Jack and Alice only have time for each other.
What is the enemy of progress?
Chaos.
Yeah. nasty word. Chaos.
The one thing they ask of us is to stay here, where it's safe.
I was here when you got here?
Yeah, you sleep in the bedroom.
The First Choice tracking shows darlings playing best to younger women who are 6 points over norm. Older women are 4 points over norm. Men really don't care. Both older and younger men are scoring way below norm. Also arriving September 23rd is Disney and 20th Century's re-release of James Cameron's 2009 classic fantasy adventure, Avatar. Having the PG-13 blockbuster return in IMAX and 3D is a smart marketing move by Disney to get moviegoers in the mood to see Cameron's sequel, Avatar: The Way of Water, when it opens December 16th. Here's a look at what went into making the original Avatar.
Been in cryo for 5 years, 9 months, and 22 days.
Pandora is a rich, lush rainforest environment.
The air is toxic, so all the work you do there you have to do protected by an oxygen mask.
You lose that mask, you're unconscious in 20 seconds, you're dead in 4 minutes.
There's one tiny human colony. Everyone here works for a corporation.
The humans are mining unobtainium.
It's essentially a mining camp in a very, very hostile environment. I'm the chief of security.
It is my job to keep you alive. I will not succeed. Not with all of you.
They have to protect themselves from this dangerous planet.
It's kind of the Garden of Eden with teeth and claws. I want the audience to feel very comfortable with the human technology that they see. We're on a planet where mid-21st century technology is about the most it'll run there because of the high intensely powerful magnetic field.
We're in the flux vortex.
Yeah, look at my instruments.
It's got to be logical with Jim. It actually has to be a possibility that in the future you could actually build something like what he's creating.
You guys are packing some heavy gear.
Yeah, that's because we're not the only thing flying around out there. We're the biggest.
So all of our aircraft that can literally do vertical takeoffs and landings. Why? Because if you're exploring another planet, you don't have landing strips on these planets. You have to go and find a patch of land that you can land in.
Thank you for flying Air Pandora.
We have some extremely effective warships, the Scorpion, the Samson helicopter, and the Dragon.
There's nothing quite like that on Earth right now. It's kind of like, almost like a mini flying aircraft carrier.
It's basically guerrilla warfare.
We've a variety of military weapons, flamethrowers, a pump-action shotgun, and the machine gun.
Na'vi can't really fight back when the humans use gunships and machine guns and these amp suits.
The amp suit is this 16-foot tall fighting machine.
It's not just something you drive. You actually get inside of the amp suit and you move, and it amplifies your movement.
This notion of a human operator inside of a big war machine that actually functions like a human is something that Jim had from the very first moment.
Let's bring the pain.
It's a real valuable tool.
This is good old-fashioned chemical-powered projectile weapons that throw a lot of brass and make a lot of noise.
Good shooting pace.
We'll also see some scary reissues in October to celebrate Halloween with a look back at John Carpenter's 1978 original Halloween, plus 2 sequels, 1988's Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, and 1989's Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. They're returning to over 400 cinemas via CineLife Entertainment, Compass International, and Trancas International. This is the second consecutive year these Halloween episodes have been available in theaters. They'll be making the most of moviegoer interest in Universal, Blumhouse, and Miramax's brand new episode, Halloween Ends, opening October 14th. The first choice tracking is huge for Ends, with younger men the top demo at 5 times norm. Next best are younger women at 4.5 times norm. Older men and older women are each a solid 13 points over norm, making Ends a 4-quadrants film for marketing. Ends begins, by the way, the box office recovery from the studio's late summer and early fall product slowdown. Although Ends is day and dating on Peacock, that shouldn't really matter. Last year, Halloween Kills day and dated under worse COVID conditions, opening to $49.4 million. It did $92 million domestic and nearly $132 million worldwide. Here's a quick catch-up on how the next 2 months should play out at the box office. Warner Bros. DC's Black Adam, starring Dwayne Johnson, arrives October 21st for superhero fantasy ticket sales. In July 2021, as exhibition's pandemic recovery was getting started, Disney's Jungle Cruise with Johnson and Emily Blunt set sail with $35 million. It did $117 million domestic and nearly $221 million worldwide. Also due October 21st is Universal Smokehouse Pictures and Working Titles rom-com Ticket to Paradise, with George Clooney and Julia Roberts starring. Tickets a tentpole for adults. Our next stop is November 11th for Disney and Marvel's Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. The 2018 original opened to $202 million. It did $700.4 million domestic and $1.4 billion worldwide. Also due November 11th for an exclusive opening is Universal and Amblin's The Fabelmans, Steven Spielberg's look back at his own childhood. Its Oscar buzz got going with its premiere at TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival. Fabelmans goes wide November 23rd for Thanksgiving, where moviegoer families will make it their post-turkey destination. Disney's animated Strange World, perhaps the year's very best movie title, also surfaces November 23rd with perfect timing as the place for families with younger kids to go over Thanksgiving weekend. Strange is a likely contender for Oscar's Best Animated Feature. And talking about contenders, it's time now to switch on our Oscar Outlook spotlight to check out the latest awards front activity. Those lowest ever ratings for the 74th Primetime Emmys are also bad news for the Golden Globes and Oscars. With only 5.9 million viewers showing up for NBC's Emmys, it's clear the audience for 3 hours-long live awards shows celebrating the best of anything is just not what it once was. Last June, the 75th Tony Awards on CBS pulled in just 3.9 million viewers. ABC's 94th Oscars last March actually look good by comparison, with 16.6 million viewers. That show ran way long at 3 hours 40 minutes, including breaking news as Will Smith smacked Chris Rock on stage. But going back to 2019, we see the 91st Oscars drew 29.6 million viewers. The reality that awards shows are no longer must-see TV is something NBC might be thinking about while deciding whether to bring back the 80th Golden Globes in January. The controversies plaguing the HFPA over membership expansion and diversification, plus allegations of past financial improprieties, are bad enough. But with NBC reportedly paying $60 million annually to air the Globes, the downward awards rating spiral just might be on the network's mind. As for the Oscars, ABC said the 94th couldn't run longer than 3 hours, but the Academy didn't listen. Oscars' new leadership is a big improvement over the recent past, and hopefully they'll start fixing things by setting a firm 3-hour limit for the 95th. With Chris Rock having refused to host the show, and with Will Smith now banned from attending, there's some time saved right there. It's definitely good news that the Academy's new CEO, Bill Kramer, and its new president, Janet Yang, just told members they've hired Glenn Weiss and Ricky Kirshner as executive producers for the 95th Oscars. The news was announced Saturday morning at an all-member meeting held at the Academy Museum and also live-streamed on the Academy's website. Weiss will also direct, as he's done the past 7 years. This will be Weiss's second time producing the Oscars and Kirshner's first. Their extensive TV credits include producing 21 live Tony Awards telecasts. It's unclear right now as to whether a producer will also be named subsequently in addition to today's 2 executive producers, but having seasoned live TV producers like Weiss and Kirshner on board shows the new Academy leadership is on track to improving the Oscars. And that's it for today's box office autopsy. We'll be back next week to see how Don't Worry Darling and the Avatar reissue open, and to focus on all things awards in our Oscar Outlook Spotlight. So please join us again then, and thanks very much for listening. Time now for our film flashback look at what was happening in Hollywood right around now, way back then. Let's set today's time travel dial for September 18th, 1987. One reason used to explain our movie drought is that September's not a great month for moviegoing, but that certainly wasn't the case when Fatal Attraction opened September 18th, 1987. The psychological thriller from Paramount and producers Stanley Jaffe and Sherry Lansing cost $14 million to make and opened to a then huge $7.6 million. It did nearly $157 million domestic and just over $320 million worldwide, making it 1987's top-grossing global film. When Fatal opened, distribution executives said its success proved movies were a 52-weeks-a-year business. Needless to say, times have changed. Jaffe and Lansing made what turned out to be perfect choices, with Michael Douglas and Glenn Close as the film's troubled ex-lovers, and Adrian Lyne directing. Fatal later received 6 Oscar nominations, including Picture, Directing, and Lead Actress. But during casting, there were so many potential choices, it could easily have been a very different movie. The screenplay by James Dearden was based on his 1980 short film Diversion for British television. Originally, Dearden was to write and direct Fatal, but Douglas wanted a more experienced director. Jaffe and Lansing needed Douglas to get the project made. They kept Dearden as screenwriter, a most unusual compromise, and looked for another director. Brian De Palma said yes, getting them a green light from Paramount, but then De Palma refused to make Fatal with Douglas. Lansing and Jaffe were loyal to Douglas for committing to the part, so they said goodbye to De Palma. They thought they'd lose their Paramount green light, but it just delayed starting production. They tried Tony Scott, who passed, to direct Beverly Hills Cop 2. They liked John Boorman, director of Deliverance, but he was about to shoot Hope and Glory. Then Adrian Lyne signed on. Lyne, who started out shooting commercials in London, was best known for Paramount's 1983 blockbuster Flashdance. Casting Douglas's role Dan had them at first considering actors like Nicolas Cage, Kevin Costner, Robert De Niro, Harrison Ford, Tom Hanks, Jack Nicholson, and Al Pacino. For Close's character, Alex, they considered stars like Faye Dunaway, Mia Farrow, and Angelica Houston, and auditioned Barbara Hershey, Sharon Stone, Deborah Winger, and others. Sally Field passed, claiming her fans wouldn't accept her in such a role. When Close auditioned, she let her naturally frizzy hair go wild. She wore a black dress she thought was just right. Lansing was impressed that Close walked in looking like the part. Then Close and Douglas did a scene flirting in a cafe. Close left thinking she'd blown the audition and killed her career. Lansing and Lyne, however, agreed she was perfect and had brought Alex to life. And that's it for today's podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll be back with another box office autopsy next week. In Hollywood for Screendollars, I'm Martin Grove.